Welcome to the Daily Agenda. I said last night in the documentary about the British movement and Operation Gladio that the troll farm would be active in spreading its lies, its false and misleading information as usual. I mean, they've only been doing it for 35 years, so why not do some more? In fact, it was entirely unsurprising to see a reiteration of an old fantasy totally and utterly blown out of the water at Derby Crown Court. But first it was repeated by Searchlight magazine with some of their own fairy tale mixture blended with it, and also by the Derby Telegraph and some local newspapers. So it goes like this, according to this anonymous egghead account, David Steele, obviously not his real name and definitely not made of steel. More like febrile aluminium foil. But anyway, joking aside, let's get to the real joke. So David Steele says, why did you turn up at a British movement meeting wearing a swastika armband and reading passages from Mein Kampf? Well, of course, that is completely untrue. And in fact, he's had a little bit to it, because that part of it, the end part of it, reading from Mein Kampf, didn't come out in Searchlight magazine or in the Derby Telegraph, nor was it raised in the trial at Derby Crown Court. Remember, Gordon Jackson was on trial, not me. Gordon Jackson, not me. Okay, that's a very important point to remember. And so they reiterate these moronic, idiotic lies, which were trashed 35 years ago. His Honour Brian Woods rejected that lie because there wasn't a shred of evidence to support it, nor was there any photographic evidence, no eyewitnesses, and no one testified to it either. But they still repeat it. Of course, Searchlight magazine had to go one step further and claim that, he, meaning me, was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. I'm a pagan, an Odinist, yeah? I absolutely detest fundamentalist Christianity, and the Ku Klux Klan, as far as I'm concerned, is a joke of an organisation, and I would never have anything to do with it. Yet again, this is the same Searchlight magazine that I had to employ a barrister in Nottingham at £300 an hour to warn them basically that any reiteration of these lies would result in libel action. Of course, they never repeated it again. They're free to repeat it again, and I'll be coming after them legally. No problem at all. Don't ever doubt it. And the reason why these trolls like David Steele use these egghead accounts, it should have been called David Aluminium Foil, quite frankly, because that's his strength of character, is because they're not brave enough to openly identify themselves. They don't have photographs of themselves either. They're cowards. They're the same cowards who assaulted me 6-1, because that's all they're capable of. But in truth, one thing I didn't manage to get into the documentary last night, well, in fact there were several things, because I needed to keep it to an hour for watchability reasons, quite frankly, because some people don't like watching videos over an hour, and so I was mindful of that fact and went for brevity as opposed to a comprehensive expose of what really happened. If I was to do that, it would take several hours, literally 7 hours, and I don't even think then the full story would be told. But all you have to do is read The Fanatics, The Rise and Fall of the British National Party. That's pretty much the fullest account of the full story, the true story you could ever have. But there was one thing that I didn't quite manage to get in because it would have taken me over the hour mark. So in 2014, Nick Griffin, the incurable liar, grifter, conman, the wrecker of the National Front and the British National Party, remember, never ever forget that. This is a man who wrecks organisations, he doesn't build them. He's a cuckoo, he's a parasite, he bores his way into organisations and ruins them, whilst enriching himself. Obviously, we know that. And it's a well-documented fact. There's plenty of people to testify to that fact. And many people tried to, but his police friends wouldn't prosecute him, would they? And talking of police friends, in 2014, Nick Griffin came onto my Daily Agenda website to leave a comment stating that the British movement did not carry out any attack against me at any time, particularly not on the 20th of January, and what I said about them was just a pack of lies. Well, there you go. Hardly surprising, is it? Because Nick Griffin has a long connection with the neo-Nazi British movement. In fact, there's that notorious t-shirt of him wearing "White Power." Yes? Where did that t-shirt come from? Well, it wasn't the National Front. That was sold by the British movement. It was a British movement t-shirt. Nick Griffin had a long association with Screwdriver and Blood and Honour. In fact, all throughout his years in the BNP as the leader, Blood and Honour and, well, Screwdriver, you could call it that, Ian Stewart was gone, but Blood and Honour were donating money to the British National Party. And prior to that, they were donating money to the British National Party, as they actually saw it as their political wing. This is something else that I was completely opposed to. But hey, you know, I wasn't the leader. Sadly, in fact, at that time, in the early 1990s, I wasn't equipped to be the leader. I was being trained as a future leader, but I wasn't yet ready to be leader. But that said, I was opposed to it, and I was a regional leader, but John Tyndall did whatever he wanted. And Griffin obviously continued that policy, a fact which I made perfectly clear when I first met him at the Mill Public House, that that meeting was actually arranged by Blood and Honour, by Benny Bullman, in fact, and he is British movement. So there's your long association with the British movement, and Nick obviously thought he was doing them a favour by coming onto my website to deny this. But at the same time, the organisation running a smear campaign against me, in that context, Protect Their Corrupt Friends in Derbyshire Police, particularly Special Branch, was the North London Troll Factory. Well, I've covered the North London Troll Factory extensively. They're all left-wing, with the exception of one UKIP crackpot, a born-again Christian, madwoman. Yeah. In fact, you'll find all of the evidence on my X account, Daily Agenda. Same news. Same news title as what we have here. It's the Daily Agenda UK. Go on to X. Check under media, you will find all of the evidence there. And so, for an assault that never happened, well, in this video, I'll publish the NHS accident and emergency record. See what Nick Griffin has to say about that. Probably could come up with some little fairy tale about saying it was Photoshop, but that's exactly what I want Griffin to do, because I'm giving him enough rope to hang himself with, and all the rest of them. I'm just drawing them in slowly and surely to deal with them, because these people need to be expunged from nationalism to ensure that we stand a chance of succeeding. Because while ever they're there, muddying the waters and polluting the well and causing division and infighting and smearing people, nationalism will not succeed. This is why it has never succeeded, because of these people. These people are the toxic old guard. And so, in another fairy tale, prior to 2014, which was quite entertaining, we had Tony the Mad Bomber Lacombe, or Tony La Bomba. This is one of the best fairy tales they came up with. So they wrote to the publisher of my book, The Fanatics, and demanded it be removed from sale and taken into protective withdrawal, simply because it contained a litany of falsehoods. They couldn't name one of them. Well, they did name one of them, and that falsehood was made by the Sunday Mercury, not by me. All I did was give an interview to the Sunday Mercury. They made up the rest of it, which is the reason why I never worked with them again. And that's easily established, quite frankly. Very easily established, and it was established. But Lacombe, the Mad Bomber, remember, a man of no moral standing whatsoever, no credibility, absolutely none. A man who also wrecks organisations and can never bring anything good to any organisation because of his toxic past and his ultra-violent mentality and his divisive antics. And so La Bomba said in the letter, this man, meaning me, was incarcerated in Mapley Mental Hospital for public safety. And this is the reason why you must take this book into protective withdrawal. So the American publisher, who didn't really know me that well, in North Carolina, they actually did take the book into protective withdrawal for several months, until I managed to secure the NHS records from my general practitioner, Dr. Kelvin Lim, to confirm that I'd never been held in any mental hospital of any description anywhere. thus burying Tony Lacombe and his fairy tales in league with Nick Griffin and Nottingham BMP. And we all know in Nottingham BMP was behind it, it's CR. Bitter little 2IC, the failure. One of the wreckers of the British National Party. He's now in Blood and Honour. In fact, he's always been on the scene with Blood and Honour. But since the BNP fell apart, he's been helping to organise Blood and Honour meetings all over Derbyshire. Well, that's what he should have been. He should never have been in the British National Party, quite frankly. It was not his place. Politicking, political campaigning was never CR's place. He is basically just a skinhead thug, for want of a better description. And he always did that as well to protect his job. He's an incurable liar. And that is easily proven. Perhaps you should remind him of Michael Smith, who was sent down for, the Royal Mail, who was sent down for 5 years for his part in the conspiracy to murder John and Joan Sterland. That's right, 5 years in prison for supplying information to the criminal underworld. That was CR's boss, no less, at the Royal Mail. Embarrassing, aren't they, these facts? You can just go away and just research them for yourself. It's all public domain material. It's not a problem for me to bring up these issues and to remind them of their past. I'm constantly told your past will always haunt you. Well, I'm here to make their past haunt them. How about that? How about that? That's the one thing they don't like. No, because in all honesty, they're just terrorists, these people. Thugs. They rely on intimidation, threats, false allegations. And over the years, they've spouted a litany of false allegations against me. Every single one has been blown out of the water. But I'll say this, in closing tonight, on this particular update to the video I made last night. If Nick Griffin wants to come and face me in a studio debate, it'll have to be remote. Because Mr. Griffin has done some particularly despicable things to me, and I really couldn't guarantee, that it would be a polite affair, if you take my meaning. So, if Mr. Griffin wants to come and face me in a remote studio debate, he can do so. And we can thrash it out. In particular, I'd like to ask him about the false allegation he made in 2014 in league with the British movement and bent coppers. Absolutely. I'm sure at Derbyshire Police he's very highly regarded after making that false allegation, because let's face it, they made up a pack of lies as well, didn't they, to protect their British movement criminals. And that is the whole point about the documentary last night and the book, The Fanatics. One of the main reasons I gave the book that title, The Fanatics, was because of the neo-Nazi British movement. Working in Operation Gladio, basically taken under the control of Special Branch and Searchlight magazine, and all it was doing was carrying out attacks on nationalists, not the far left. Not at all. They were completely impotent against the far left, in truth. But anyway, back to the real issue. If Nick Griffin, the incurable liar, wants to come and face me in a studio debate, because his little army of trolls, and they are very, very few in number, tiny little faction. That's all he's got left now. In fact, he has less than 3% of the former BNP membership behind him, whereas I have the vast majority. So who's won, Mr. Griffin? Who's won this battle? I've won the battle. And I told Griffin in 2002, shortly before I left the BNP, that one day I would come back and knock him off his perch, off his pedestal, and that's exactly what's happened. I'd quite happily knock him off his pedestal even further, if he wants to try and climb back up on it, that is. And he won't be getting back on any pedestal with the Christian Nationalist Party, because that's just a grifting operation to secure the pension fund of Nick Griffin and Jim Dowson. I don't believe that's the case with Jada Franson, however, although she does need to take a very serious look at herself, being associated with Dowson and Griffin. My goodness. We all know how the vast majority of nationalists think about Griffin and Dowson, don't they? But they don't think about me like it. And that's the big issue, isn't it? It's the issue that they simply just cannot overcome. And none of their lies are ever going to change a thing, because I won't ignore their lies. I will not ignore their lies, their false and misleading misrepresentations to the public and to nationalists in particular. I will attack their lies. I will challenge them. And I will demand to see facts-based evidence from them. And that is the one thing they can never produce. So I will say to Mr. Griffin, please come and face me in a studio debate. We'll have to do it remotely. You know the reasons why. Because, you know, we don't want any entertainment of an unpleasant nature, do we? But it will be very pleasant ripping Griffin to shreds on this issue. Please bring with you, Mr. Griffin, the evidence to prove the false allegation, and I'll bring all of the evidence to prove that what I've said is completely true. And because all of my evidence is documented and actually comes from the National Health Service, primarily, you know. So, you're welcome anytime you want to, Mr. Griffin. Come and try it. I will humiliate you so badly. So badly. But then again, having said that, Griffin has no sense of shame. So he probably wouldn't see any sense of humiliation because he's just an incurable liar. This is the man who I described, quite literally, as having a spiritual energy tantamount to a pile of manure. That's how I felt about the man. But he's quite welcome, anytime he sees fit, to come and face me in a studio debate. He can even repeat many of the, or most, or all of the false and misleading allegations all the other cretins have made. I'll blow them out of the water as well, whenever they want to. But I did say last night, and I meant it, that the troll factory would be active again, because every time you say something about this attempted murder, the trolls crawl out of the swamp, spouting abuse, threats and lies. And perhaps what I should also do is go to those sites on the Nottinghamshire-Derbyshire border where they physically stalked me for 2 years. That's right, physically stalked me for 2 years, but not one of them could find the minerals to actually have a go because they just weren't man enough. And they knew perfectly well what would happen to them. And when I make that video, I'll also explain to them, because I know they watch, all the ambush points I set for them and how I intended to how could I put it, neutralise them. So that should be very entertaining for them. And I can devise other neutralisation points very easily, that's not a problem. So don't think making threats against me is going to have any difference. It won't. I'm not scared of any of these people, and they know the reason why I'm not scared of them. But in truth, let's get back to the issue of evidence. There is no evidence to substantiate any of their lies and fairy tales. Another one came 2 weeks ago which said, which is truly hilarious, and we'll close on this one. Now the thing is, the video I made about Ian Stewart and class war, now we believe that you're responsible for Ian Stewart's death, and you covered it up. That's right, me, I did it. You covered it up all this time, and that makes you responsible. So either you're responsible for it or you did it yourself. You see, this is what you get from these morons. They're sick and twisted. And this is the point that I keep making, and I have to keep making it, because nationalists can never succeed whilst they're in league with a warped, toxic troll factory. The toxic old guard has to be expunged from nationalism forever. We don't need to find out who they are. We know who all of them are. You've only got to look at Nick Griffin and Jim Dowson for a start. You'll find nearly all of the toxic old guard you're looking for. And if you want to look for some more, just go and find Tony LaBomba and the British Democrats. And look at the British movement and Patriotic Alternative. There's loads of them. They're infested with the toxic old guard. And Kenny Smith and the Homeland Party are quite right to refuse them entry. And that's a policy that must be maintained, in my view. And it's not just the Homeland Party. There's also another pressure group, campaign group right now, building up, Remigration Now. And this is what we're really interested in, Remigration Now. But the simple fact is, the toxic old guard aren't interested in the remigration campaign. All they want to do is spread lies and falsehoods. And the reason why they're doing it, because they're in league with the secret state. And they have been for a very long time. And they don't want remigration to succeed. They want this country to fail. They want white people to become a minority. And they want Britishness and our culture to simply disappear from the face of the earth within 150 years. And that's exactly what will happen if we don't win the battle for remigration. So, which do you prefer? the toxic old guard and its division and lies, or a positive, proactive, pragmatic Remigration Now campaign? Because that's what I'm offering you. I'm not offering you the failure of the past, I'm offering you the potential to succeed in a way that nationalism has never succeeded before. Let us join together to make sure that the Remigration campaign succeeds, because it is an existential issue and we have to succeed, and we can only succeed by expelling the old guard forever to ensure that positivity triumphs over negativity.